The silence in the Bennett house felt louder than any argument. Laura Bennett noticed it the moment she stepped inside, her heels stopping at the doorway as if the air itself warned her. The lights were on, the living room neat, but something was wrong. She felt it in her chest, a tight pull that had nothing to do with work or traffic or the late hours she hoped no one had counted. Laura was 46, and tired in a way sleep never fixed. She lived in a quiet Ohio suburb where lawns were trimmed and smiles were polite. From the outside, her life looked stable. A husband, a grown son, a steady job. But lately, everything inside her felt fragile, like glass held together by habit. Mark. Her husband wasn't home yet. Or maybe he was, hiding in the basement like he often did these days. Their marriage had slowly faded into routines and shared bills. They didn't fight. They didn't laugh either. Years ago, they had promised to always talk. Somewhere along the way, that promise broke quietly. Laura set her purse down and took a deep breath. She told herself she was imagining things. Still, she didn't head to the kitchen. Instead, she walked toward the living room, following a feeling. She couldn't name. Daniel was sitting on the couch. He didn't look up at first. He just sat there, hands clasped, shoulders tense. Daniel was 22, tall like his father, but with Laura's eyes. He had moved back home after college, saying it was temporary. She had been secretly glad. The house felt less empty with him around. "Hey," Laura said softly. Daniel raised his head. His face was serious, older than it should have been. There was no anger in his eyes. "Something worse lived there. We need to talk," he said. The words landed hard. Laura forced a small smile and tried to sound calm. "Can it wait? I've had a long day." "No," Daniel said. "It can't." Laura sat in the armchair across from him. Her heart beat faster. She searched his face, trying to understand what he knew and how he knew it. Mothers had instincts, and hers screamed that the truth was already out. Daniel stood up and paced once, then stopped. He looked straight at her. "I know about Ethan." The room seemed to tilt. Laura's breath caught. Her mind raced through excuses, lies, half-truths. None of them felt strong enough. She had prepared herself for many things, Mark finding out, gossip at work, even losing her marriage. She had never prepared for this moment. "How?" she whispered. "That doesn't matter," Daniel said. "What matters is that you're lying to Dad." Laura closed her eyes. Ethan, just hearing his name spoken aloud, made her feel exposed. Ethan Clark was not some stranger. He was an old family friend, someone she had known for years. They had reconnected by accident, a coffee meeting that turned into long talks. No touching, no promises. But feelings had grown quiet and dangerous. "It's not what you think," Laura said quickly. "Nothing happened." "That's not the point," Daniel replied. His voice shook, but he stayed firm. "You're still crossing a line." Laura felt tears sting her eyes. She wanted to explain how lonely she had been, how invisible she felt. Sitting across from Mark at dinner, how Ethan listened and remembered and made her feel seen again. But saying that to her son felt wrong in a way she couldn't explain. "I never wanted you involved," she said. This was between adults. Daniel let out a short laugh, sharp and tired. "You made it my business when you brought it into this house," he said. "When you started lying, when you stopped being honest." The words hurt because they were true. Laura looked down at her hands. They trembled slightly. She thought of the messages she had sent, the ones she deleted, right? After she thought of the coffee shop on Main Street, the corner table where she felt like herself again. She thought of how easily things could slip from control. "I was going to end it," she said. "I just needed time." Daniel shook his head. "That's what people always say," he replied. "Meanwhile, Dad has no idea. He thinks everything is fine." Laura swallowed hard. "Things haven't been fine for a long time. It doesn't make this okay," Daniel said. They sat in silence. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Laura felt like she was shrinking, becoming someone she didn't recognize. She had always tried to be a good mother, honest, strong. Now her son looked at her like she was a stranger. "I love your father," she said quietly, "but love changes." Daniel's eyes softened for a moment, then he straightened. "I'm not here to judge your feelings," he said. "I'm here because this is wrong, and because if you don't tell him, I will." The sentence hit her like a blow. "You wouldn't," Laura said, her voice breaking. "I would," Daniel replied. "I don't want to, but I will." Fear spread through her chest. Not fear of losing Mark, fear of losing her son's respect. Fear of becoming the kind of person she had always promised herself she wouldn't be. "You're asking me to destroy our family," Sue said. Daniel shook his head again. "No," he said. "I'm asking you to stop destroying it quietly." The front door opened suddenly. Both of them froze. Mark stepped inside, loosening his tie, distracted by his phone. He barely glanced at them. "Hey," he said. "Long day." Laura felt her heart slam against her ribs. She looked at Daniel, panic rising. Daniel met her gaze, then looked away. Mark walked toward the kitchen, unaware of the storm sitting in his living room. "I'll be down in a bit," he called back. "Just need a shower." When he disappeared down the hall, Laura exhaled shakily. She stood up and moved toward Daniel, lowering her voice. "Please," she said, "give me time, just a little." Daniel looked torn. For a second, she saw the boy he used to be, the one who ran to her when he scraped his knee, the one who trusted her without question. "How much time?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I need to do this right." Daniel nodded slowly. "You have until the end of the week." Her stomach dropped. "If he doesn't know by then," Daniel continued, "I'll tell him myself." Laura nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. She knew he meant it. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Mark slept beside her, his back turned. She listened to his breathing and wondered when exactly they had become strangers sharing a bed. She thought of Ethan and the comfort he offered. She thought of Daniel's face, disappointed but determined up by morning. Her head ached from thinking. At work she couldn't focus. Every sound made her jump. Every message on her phone felt dangerous. She ignored Ethan's texts, letting them sit unread. When she got home, Daniel wasn't there. Mark was in the kitchen cooking dinner. The sight surprised her. "Thought I'd try something different," Mark said. "We never eat together anymore." Guilt twisted inside her. She sat at the table and watched him move around the kitchen, realizing how little she noticed him these days. They ate in silence. Mark talked about work. Laura nodded and smiled at the right moments. Every word felt heavy with what she wasn't saying. That evening, Daniel came home late. He barely looked at her before heading upstairs. Laura wanted to follow him, to say something that would make this better. Nothing came. Days passed fast and slow at the same time. Laura avoided Ethan, avoided mirrors, avoided her own thoughts. Mark seemed lighter, almost hopeful, unaware that everything balanced on a single truth. On Friday night, Laura stood alone in the living room, staring at the clock. Daniel was out. Mark was in the basement. Time was running out. She picked up her phone and saw Ethan's name on the screen. A missed call. She closed her eyes, knowing that whatever she chose next would change her life. And somewhere upstairs, her son waited for her to cross one final line or finally step back. Morning came too quickly, bright sunlight spilling through the blinds, making Laura squint as she sat at the kitchen table with her coffee untouched. The warmth of the day did nothing to calm her. The house felt heavy, full of unspoken words. Daniel had gone out early, claiming he had errands, but Laura knew he was watching, waiting for her to make the next move. Mark was still in the basement, probably checking emails or pretending to be busy. Unaware that the quiet walls of their home had been hiding a secret that could shatter everything, Laura stared at her reflection in the window. She barely recognized Herself, this woman who had spent years being invisible in her own home. She had been lonely, unnoticed, craving a connection that Mark no longer offered. Ethan had been that connection, but even though nothing physical had happened, the emotional intimacy was enough to feel like betrayal, and Daniel had known. He had seen it, and now he carried the weight of her truth by midday, Laura decided. She couldn't wait any longer. She had to speak. She needed to confront the consequences of her choices. Daniel returned shortly after she made that decision. He leaned against the doorframe of the kitchen, arms folded, eyes cautious. He didn't scold her or mock her. He just waited. That quiet patience was harder to face than anger. "I need to tell him," Laura said softly, "before you do." Daniel nodded, relief and tension mixed on his face. "It's the right thing," he said, "even if it hurts. It's the rest of." The day passed in a blur. Laura tried to act normal around Mark, but the words she carried were heavy, pressing down on her chest. Mark sensed something, of course. He noticed her hesitation, the way she kept glancing at her phone, the slight trembling in her hands. But he didn't push, didn't ask. Laura knew it would be easier for him to hear it from her directly, not from someone else, not even from Daniel. By evening, the moment came. Laura found Mark sitting in the living room, reading a book. She took a deep breath, heart pounding. "Mark," she began, "we need to talk." Mark looked up, surprised, but calm. "About what?" "The truth," Laura said. "About me. About everything I've been hiding." She told him about Ethan, about the conversations that made her feel alive again, about the loneliness that had pushed her toward something dangerous. She didn't go into unnecessary detail, didn't mention every text or meeting. She just spoke. The truth that needed to be heard. Mark listened quietly, his face unreadable. When she finished, silence filled the room. Laura held her breath, waiting for anger, shouting, maybe even the breaking of a glass. But Mark didn't react that way. He leaned back, hands clasped, looking at her with a mix of pain and disappointment. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Too long," Laura whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." Mark nodded, eyes softening slightly. "I can see that," he said, "but I don't know what to do now." Laura felt a sharp ache. She wanted him to be angry, to express something tangible, but instead there was just distance. A wall built between them, invisible but undeniable. The days that followed were difficult. Mark moved into the guest room, a quiet separation forming, without discussion. Counseling was mentioned, but never scheduled. The house felt different, divided by secrets and choices, a tension that neither could escape. Laura avoided Ethan completely. No calls, no messages, no meetings. The comfort he had offered was gone, replaced by guilt and the knowledge of what she had risked. Daniel watched it all from a distance, carrying a burden he hadn't expected. He wondered if stepping into the truth had been the right thing. He loved his mother and he wanted her to be happy, but the cost of honesty was higher than he imagined. He saw her crying quietly at night, heard her soft sighs in the empty rooms, and felt both pride and sadness. He had crossed a line himself by confronting her, but he knew it was necessary. One night, Laura knocked on Daniel's door. He opened it cautiously, unsure of what she wanted. "I need you to know something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What you did, confronting me. It hurt, but it also helped. You forced me to see the truth." Daniel swallowed hard, conflicted. "I just wanted you to choose what was right," he said quietly. "Even if it meant stepping where I shouldn't." Laura nodded. "I don't know, I have," she said, "even if it cost me everything." The weeks passed slowly. Mark stayed mostly. Distant conversations were polite but hollow. Laura focused on herself, rebuilding her life from the inside out. She learned to live with the consequences of her choices and the actions of her son. It wasn't easy. Every step forward felt fragile, as if the smallest misstep could undo everything. Daniel became more withdrawn, aware that his involvement had changed the family forever. Yet he also grew, understanding that love sometimes means making impossible choices and accepting their consequences. He learned that truth could hurt, but it also had the power to heal. Laura realized that while her marriage was uncertain, she had taken the first step toward honesty. She had faced herself, faced her feelings, and faced her son. And in that there was a kind of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Mark remained distant, but not angry. The house was quiet, not because nothing happened, but because everything had changed. Laura and Daniel shared quiet moments of understanding, small gestures that reminded them of their bond. Even when the world around them felt unstable, through the pain and uncertainty, Laura discovered that she could survive the consequences of her choices. She could face the reality of her life without hiding, without pretending. And Daniel learned that sometimes protecting the people you love requires stepping into uncomfortable truths, even if it means crossing a line that can never be erased. The Bennett household was forever changed, but there was hope. A fragile, quiet hope that life, honesty, and love even when complicated, could still find a way forward. Laura had confronted herself, her emotions, and her mistakes, and in doing so, she had begun the journey toward a new beginning, one that was uncertain but hers to live.